Mike, let's roll.
Just a second. Vishwas, I hope I'm well audible, right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thanks. Very warm welcome to each and every one of you friends. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for taking out time from your busy schedules. We are very passionate about this topic, and so are you. And that is why you're here, right? For the ones who have joined in just for the sake of curiosity, we promise you won't regret spending this time here. A lot of effort, hard work, research has gone into bringing this webinar to you. Every bit of the content which you would be hearing was discussed in detail, brainstormed, properly screened, and only after that did it make it here. We're not here to pinpoint any individual or company or organization, but the whole idea to have this webinar was to make people aware of the current scenario and try and find possible solutions. Our president, Mr. Vishwas Makhija, will elaborate more on how we came up with the idea of this webinar and how important it was to have this. And even more than that, how important it is to spread this awareness further to each and every traveler and to every entity involved with the travel and tourism space in our country. Before I hand over this to Vishwas, I wish to talk about my friend, our dear Akshay. He moved on to a more appropriate world for him last year on 16th of September, and we are dedicating this webinar in his memory. And not just because it is going to be 1 year tomorrow, but because he felt about this topic so strongly, a matter so close to his heart, that he would do whatever possible to save our natural heritage and whatever possible to raise the bar of the standards of adventure tourism in our country. This is for Akshay. May I please request you all to observe silence for 2 minutes and pray for his soul to get the eternal peace. Please also pray for his family and friends to get all the strength and courage to cope up with this loss, which is beyond any explanation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, friends. Look forward to a great session. Over to you, Vishwas. Thank you.
Vinayak, and a good morning to everyone here, and welcome to this ATOAI's initiative on National Awareness Webinar. Today is an important day in ATOI history as we work together with each one of you present here and others who could not join, and are happy to be part of the journey that we have all embarked upon. As the great Indian outdoors explode for the influx, especially post-COVID openings, it is time for a reality check. It is time to look around us. It is time to look within. and it is time to look at our mother nature. It is time to behave, work and travel responsibly in the outdoors. We all live in a very fragile environment, and the onus is on us to save the outdoors for our future generations and act responsibly. I think the responsibility lies with each one of us, be it an operator, local guides, lodge owners, homestays, local governments, local communities, and most important, the clients that we take to the outdoors. Our work within the ATOAI community is to sensitize all stakeholders, be it recognized companies from the central government or at the state level or locally run outfits. Let's not allow anyone or any more to destroy our national heritage, our resources, and most importantly, precious lives for short-term financial gains. Let's not be carried away at times when voices are raised about local sentiments, employment opportunities, and regional acceptances of collaborations or cautions. The larger picture which is emerging, there is enough for everyone to share, grow and preserve together. We need to ensure that the local communities are not exploited and systems are put in place by the governments of every state. The Native American saying, and I would like to read that sentence down here for everyone. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it for our children. So hope this message is heard well by one and all. Last few weeks, months have seen an upsurge in louder voices being echoed from various parts of the Himalayas and across the country on accidents, young lives being lost, exploitation of animals, digging of trenches in forest lands, yatra-style trekkings, fixed camps, trekking trails being totally destroyed by sheer number game competition by some online companies or so-called trusts. Let me remind everyone, the Himalayas are playground of the gods, not ours. So let's not continue to destroy what most around the world can only dream of or see it in pictures. This is our heritage, our treasure, and for the future of our generations. It is our collective responsibility to conserve it. Let's all pledge together in ensuring that we will educate ourselves, our neighbors, our children, our clients on the way forward for us as a nation in conserving the great Indian outdoors. I request colleagues from the various state governments listening, friends from the media, local state associations, and all stakeholders to support ATOI initiatives as this affects one and all. I, as ATOI president, dedicate this seminar today to our late friend, mentor, Akshay, for whom this was a very important subject. And on the eve of his first anniversary, I'm sure he's even proud of his ATOI colleagues as we carry his unfinished work forward. Thank you everyone for listening, and let's be the change we want to see. I'm going to hand over the proceedings to Mr. Vaibhav Kala, our dynamic young vice president, to run you through this morning. Thank you everyone and welcome again.
Thank you, Vishwas. Not so young anymore, but good morning to our amazing speakers and everyone who's taken the time out on this midweek morning. It will only be fair to start from the beginning and see how we got to this day. Hopefully a day that will spawn on to have many more such occasions where we can talk and discuss and talk about solutions for this problem that only seems to be growing each year. So before I begin with what we must share with all of you, Here's a journey. I'll take about 25 minutes to run you through the problems and possible solutions. So thank you for your patience. A bit of the background, really. India's adventure travel story, began in the 80s with a handful of outdoorsmen and women in an era where importing equipment through international borders was virtually impossible, and that too for a non-existent market. As improved economy, better roads, aviation and tech revolutions, aided by increased economic ability, have helped these activities to the fore. This is especially true for commercial trekking, an activity that has cantered to over 10 times the size today. Then came the true gallop, really, with no regulatory regimes in place, aided by increased economic ability, self-expression. All one needs now is a certificate of incorporation to start your business. By law, there is really no requirement for permits, experience, recognition, certifications, or insurance to be an adventure travel company. As the large Indian market moved into the outdoors, customers hurtled into fragile environments which were unprepared for these sort of numbers. Back-to-back groups began marching into India's natural heritage, which now is witnessing conveyor belt operations driven by virtual players, internet campaigns that commoditize what were initially pure experiences. More and more mass players resulted in a price war that is still ongoing. Mixed into this deadly cocktail is the unaware customer. The results, with no access control came more bums on not enough toilet seats, more human waste at overused campsites, illegally fixed camps in reserve forests and national parks. Some iconic trails like Stokangri, Rupkund, Bedni Bugyal, Chadar, Kashmir Meadows, as of last month, bear witness to this ignominy. Accompanied by a rising accident rate, headlines and bans, the real danger is in the erosion of the very USP that brings people outdoors, into the Indian outdoors from within the country as well as outside. And that stands to be India's greatest loss. So let's see the issue up close. A short 2-minute video that captures the issues before we go into studying the problem in greater detail, especially in a post-COVID scenario where India needs to emerge as a responsible destination. This becomes even more important. I'm going to share this 2-minute clip and then we move on.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to One India News and I'm Pooja Sachdeva. The National Green Tribunal today banned camping activity from Gaumukh to Rishikesh in Uttarakhand to tackle the problem of pollution in River Ganga.
The outdoor industry is facing some severely critical challenges today. Safety is being compromised, accident rates are very high, regulations are being violated, our natural heritage is under threat.
इसमें क्या करना है अभी? लैट्रिन। उनको किसी ने बोला गवर्नमेंट ने कि ये खोद लो यहाँ से?
यार हमें उतना पता नहीं है, हमें बोला आप ये खोद दो तो हम पैसे देंगे।
Most of these accidents and most of these streams that are going up and down are the sources through the mass trekking that has been happening on this route and in various other routes in Himachal Pradesh. People are coming in bulk. People are taking clients more than 50 to 100 at one time at one go, which is not a sustainable way of trekking.
We all know Ladakh is a very popular adventure tourism destination, but of late we've seen an influx of mass tourism to some of the ecologically fragile regions. To revive the adventure tourism industry of Ladakh, I feel it is paramount that we conduct, carrying capacity studies to these regions and not to allow mass trekkers enter these trekking routes.
दोस्तों, 30 साल पहले हिमालय के सुदूर वादियों में जब हमने काम शुरू किया था तो सोचा नहीं था कि एक ऐसा भी दिन आएगा जब हमें बात करना होगा कि किस तरह से इन वादियों को इंसान के अतिक्रमण से बचाना है.
So that, friends, was the gist of what's going on. It's going on not only in our meadows, in our valleys, in our high trails, And this impact needs to be, it's a call to action. Like Vinayak said, it's not a witch hunt, it's a call to action, it's a status update, and it's something that we all need to stand up for and find a way out. So I'm sorry to be the bearer of not such great news, but the next presentation is basically about the problems, cause and effect, and the darker side of adventure travel that we don't always want to talk about. And I'm sure we as stakeholders have a lot invested already, and we need to rise and take count of what's going on. These are the sort of headlines that have plagued Indian media and the Indian outdoor adventure industry over the last 5 to 6 years. It has grown in leaps and bounds. The Kurangani forest fire killed 20 something in the Theni district, where apparently there was no information and no permission. A lot of people died for reasons we'll probably never know. Two young kayakers, I had the opportunity to know one of them as well, drowned in Kerala's river, which they were trying to run at very, very high flows. Big loss for the kayaking community in the south. A British national's body was looked for in Meghalaya on the Umgi River. Ages of rescue, again, unnecessary, uncalled for. A district official in Meghalaya went on a picnic, got onto a lake on a kayak, no life jacket, no helmet, drowned within sight of his fellows. And the Hindus screaming headlines, they're associating death with young in the wild. These are the headlines, friends, that need to change, that we need to be cognizant of. And these are not just a few, there are many more. 9 trekkers died in a forest fire in Tamil Nadu. An Israeli trekker falls into a gorge, trekking all alone. Nobody knew where he was, what his plan was. Delhi trekkers going missing. Rafting and rapids, class 3 rapids on the Ganga are associated now with risk on the Hindustan Times. People freezing to death, a raft overturning, an old woman drowning. These are not few and far in between. Trekkers dying. An Indian Oil senior manager died on the Panpatia Glacier. Horrendous evacuations in Himachal, in the Chandrakhani Pass, in the Kasol region in Chanchal. People dying in the outdoors, and no proof of access, no information in most of these cases. Big evacuations have happened over the last 3-4 years in Himachal, in Uttarakhand, in Ladakh. Pune banned the Green Mile because accidents were spiking. It all comes to the fore when important people pass, as it does so often in Rishikesh. It's the bane of river running that needs to be arrested. They were talking about a rafting act. Himachal has, in fact, red flagged illegal operations many, many times. The government has come to the fore, talked about it, but nothing has been done. They've talked about illegal operations being a major threat for tourists. 80 people on an illegal trek in the Antara Gange. You might wonder, what are 80 people doing on a trek, and that too without permission? It's utterly shocking. And this leads to bans, normal knee-jerk reactions in what we've seen in the past decade have been put a stop to it. I mean, this is a stop to livelihoods. Thousands and thousands of people in our industry depend on these jobs, and because of reasons unknown, reasons of arrest haven't been activated. We've had bans in Uttarakhand and river rafting, paragliding, water sports, all kinds of other aero sports. People have drowned in the Tista, in the Zanskar, in the Lider, in the Beas. There are countless incidents which haven't been resolved so far. Now's a good time to talk about it. And the shocking thing is that nearly 99% of these incidents, friends, are possible to prevent or could have been prevented. Let's start with the river accidents, really. So India's got possibly, one of the world's largest river resources, from the Lidar to the Indus, Zanskar, Beas, Spiti, Tons, Alaknanda, Bhagirathi, Kali, Ganga, Tista, Siang, Kameng, Subansari. The list is endless. There is just so much river running possibility, and it's happening. It's not that this is only in the stage of potential. These are operations that are running all over the country, and yet we are unable to find a system where safety is defined. There are violations that still go on: single raft trips, overloaded trips, late trips which mostly result in some sort of accidents occurring because of these factors. Laryngospasm has been proven to be one of the world's largest cause of dry drownings the world over. You might not find water in the lungs, but yes, the person dies. Heart attacks, of course, everyone dies of a cardiac arrest. Every report will tell you that. Entrapment, drowning, hypothermia, others, again, all causes that can be avoided with proper training and proper safety. And there's no reason why we should not be able to enforce that in the realm of regulation or even self-regulation. No use of PFD, like the man in Meghalaya on a kayak trip, on a picnic with his friends, lack of planned safety, less or no safety, or a lack of available safety. You might have all the safety, but an incorrect setup will not help your safety setup at all. Or a slow speed of response, or just cold water and inadequate protection. Dangerous cocktails of disaster. And since 1996, it's not only in India, it's the world over. The rise of rafting and popularity since the mid-90s has proportionally increased, and as a result, the fatalities have increased as well. But to be an outstanding adventure travel destination, these are things that are very easily looked into. Let's take the example of rafting on the Ganga. It's the biggest hub. It's possibly the biggest hub in the world. You have 250 plus companies. It's astounding, over a 24-kilometer section of river, and which is largely class 3 plus, with just 2 safe pool and drop class 4s. Over 95% is float, class 1 and 2. And it's really like the safest. I mean, I would send my grandmother on it, to be honest. The advantages are huge. It's non-technical. There are no midstream rocks. It's pool drop. You have a road running right along the river. It's not super cold. Water temperatures are 12 to 14 Celsius. It's warm tropical environment. Even in the middle of winter, the day temperatures are high 20s. There's no danger of hypothermia. Medical help is within 30 minutes with a helipad at the Ames. There's a huge operator hub, plenty of equipment, manpower, and expertise available. But yet you have the highest number of deaths that have happened over the last decade on the Ganga. Let's see why. How do we prepare our guides and trip leaders to make good decisions? Experience is really the best teacher, aided with training. And the other valuable tool that has been now recognized the world over is gaining experience through accident reporting. Whether it's on river, whether it's on land, sharing experiences helps save lives. And sadly in India, our guesstimate from the ATOAI is that we have only 5.5% of accident reporting, which is a shocking statistic. If we can up this to 100% or around, then we can change the game forever, because that's going to help other people understand why it happened, how did it happen, what was done, and what can be done in future if it happens to us. This sadly is the singular big factor that contributes to continuing accidents, because accidents repeat themselves, friends. One small decision normally has a snowballing impact, and it has a domino effect. Not losing sight of small decisions is just so critical, as we know, in the outdoors. And maybe the most conservative option is always the best option. This is really the crux of the matter. This is, like I said earlier, this is not a witch hunt. This is reality. This is reality of today that we must all wake up to and face, and a reality that needs to be curbed. This is a snapshot of, this is one of the many, many advertising campaigns that go around. People are not people, guests are not guests. They are batches, they are seats, 20 batches, strengths of 25 to 35. It's flabbergasting the sort of numbers that we are talking about. I mean, just this one slide will give you the extent to which our natural heritage is being compromised and massified. These valleys are not too far from each other. If you count the number of batches and count the number of man days, you are looking at a staggering figure, friends. Rampant commercialization. This is again just another company. No names. This is not a witch hunt. This is reality, like I said. Accident rates are directly proportional to the unregulated and unregistered entries into our natural heritage. This one says 41 batches into 30 people. That's 1,230 guests in 44 days. And you multiply that by 6 to 7 times, that's the number of days these people are there. You're talking about 6,000 plus man days in 44 days. And this is just one company. So human greed really has arrived in the outdoors. It leads to degradation of our natural heritage. I mean, every Indian citizen's right to clean Indian outdoors remains unadulterated. But this is what is happening. If you look at the photograph, bottom left, there are 18 tents, 3 people inside, 54 people, plus trekking staff, plus guide team. And we have 2 toilet tents. It's almost a disincentive to use the toilet. Can you imagine going to 2 toilet tents that is being used by 60, 65 people? The human feces is certainly not contained in such an environment. And that has been seen on so many trails. There's some trails which have been named toilet paper trails because it's just not been looked into at all. We move to the right, right of the screen, and you have this young lady. She's got her trekking pole in her left hand, and she's going down this hillside. This is an 80-foot drop over the semi-frozen Chadar River. And all it needs is a slip, and she'd bounce off those rocks and fall into a freezing river. The gentlemen on the right, they are getting their photograph taken. It's a nice sunny day on the Chadar trek. The Zanskar River's part frozen. They're taking a dip in it, not knowing that all it needs is just a cloud to come over it, and with that goes the sun and their lives. So it's a mockery of safety. It's mockery of safety to the extent that it compromises not only their own personal safety, but the industry as well. These are the sort of headlines, friends, that need to change. The mass batches have to go. They've got to come back, nature experiences as they were always intended to be. Headlines of deaths, of accidents, of bans need to be replaced with great practices, good SOPs, safety, guidelines, regulation. That's really what we need at this point. And we hope this is going to be the start of many across the country that can lead to our industry being safeguarded. There are livelihoods at stake. Every time there's an accident, every time there's a ban, lots of people lose their jobs. Single-use plastic has been the single most largest contributor to just garbage, to collection of garbage. One of the first bans that occurred in our high meadows was the Rupkund ban. And I saw the initial photographs that came out, as you must have as well. The amount of plastic that was generated and left behind by so-called aware companies and educated guests who go on these trips. I mean, I cannot believe for a second that guests would be able to overlook the fact that the trails were littered over months of use. And now there are options. There are options to single-use plastic. The best filtration systems are available in India. There is really no need for bottled water, for plastic to find their way up. And if they do, then they better be brought back. Uttarakhand government is still working with the High Court to lift the Bugyal restrictions. And as a report came in to the ATOAI just yesterday, apparently this is again being violated. There are operations that are going to Rupkund on the sly. This is something that we are looking into, and it's just shocking that this is the stage that we've reached. Why are accidents repeating themselves, you might wonder? It's well, skill development of activity is the need of the hour. Experience needs to be aided by formal training of refreshers, of doing the same thing again and again. Guests are neither trained nor have the experience, so we need to guide them as industry. No registrations or regulations means companies get away with just about anything. Look at the amount of garbage. Look at the pits being dug in Anantnag district. Who does that kind? Was this ever possible? How can this be made possible? How can you go to a reserve forest area and dig a pit for a latrine? Because there are no consequences. What resulted on that incident, which you saw on the video, was an immediate ban on trekking in the Tarsar Marsa, the lakes area in Anantnag. Immediate ban. Yeah, we don't know what happened to that or what actions were taken, but what happened was several people again lost their livelihoods because of the folly of a few. The entire industry gets a bad name and the entire industry gets affected. And this is really the reason why accidents continue, really. So we boiled it down to the fact that there are just no consequences. Until that situation is going to remain, this status quo will continue. I'm going to take time to dwell on a couple of classic cases why the situation continues the way it is. Young Akhil Chadha, 30-year-old boy, went to Manali, was on a guided trek with 12 guests. Not only guests, there were guides, there were porters. For some reason, he was sent back alone. We'll never know why. No one checked if he reached Manali safely. No report was filed. No report was filed by the guide. No accident report shared. He was found just 3 hours in a ditch where you could see Manali. You could see the lights of Manali from where he was. Yeah, we will never know what happened. No accident report has been shared. There will be no learning from this. As with other cases, nobody will ever know what could have been done to save him. Again, there are no consequences. Padmesh Patil went into coma for months. Resident of Pune, he'd come on a guided climb to Stoke Kangri. He was returning from the summit, tired, dehydrated, possibly early onset of AMS. Discounting that, what's shocking is he had no ropes, no crampons. He was with no guide. No reports were filed by the company, by the guide. No report was shared. No report was shared with the industry. Again, there are no consequences. At least 9 people have died on the Chadha trek in the last few years. From something that was the domain of serious alpinists in sub-zero, -30, -35 Celsius, it changed color. It became an easy weekend thrill. You could buy it for a song on an online website. A raging annual price war ensued. There were no checks, no regulations. It was all about bragging rights, even if you were to spend a day on the Chadha and come back because you couldn't handle the cold. No reports were filed. No reports were filed by guides, by companies, no accident reports shared. Again, and this is the reason why accidents continue, because there is no learning, because there are no consequences. Let's take a minute to study the cause and effect, really. It's again, like we discussed, it's just one bad decision that snowballs to another, and as the string of bad decisions grows, the alternates to ensure safety reduces. So bad decisions is not just in the realm of the operator. Bad decisions could be bad policies, poor management of the area, poor regulation, poor access control. And that's really what we need to see. This is not just operator driven. It is driven by governments, by local administrations, local associations, and by the guests themselves, sadly. So there are really 2 kinds of fatalities that we have seen over the last decade since adventure travel became such a popular activity. A is the most common that you will see in your area of work is the inexperienced guest or a professional caught in a situation above his or her ability, capability, or skill level. Type B is less common in India. It's more like the British kayaker on the Umgi River, accomplished outdoorsmen attempting extremely dangerous challenges. So we are really looking at A. That really is the problem area, and that's what we need to solve for. The changing trends have been quite obvious for everyone who's been working since the 80s, 90s. You've seen how it's burgeoned from and the world over, from something that was a very small cottage industry to the 90s onwards, where the trend of adventure travel grew, and so did commercial fatalities. And the guests aren't tough enough as they were in the 80s and the 90s. They weren't doing the things on a regular basis. Their yearly big hike wasn't there. The physical ability, experience, and fitness has been declining. We all know that. There has been a great surge in runners and cyclists and all that, but generally in the outdoors, we know that doesn't really count. Better equipment availability, improved guiding skills, more experiences have made it possible for some of us to operate bigger challenges. But the guests who ends up on them sometimes may feel very overwhelmed and helpless. The solution really is to a doctrine of avoidance, deterrence, prevention. That's the only thing that holds us all in good stead, understanding and minimizing the risk, right from the guests to understanding by the team leaders is paramount when it comes to prevention. They're the ones who are leading the pack. They are the ones who are in command. They are the ones who are absolutely, utterly responsible for what happens on ground. And that understanding of the risk can only come from experience and knowledge. And that becomes essential to guest and company safety. Starting from the team leaders, it's the support team, everybody down the chain, from support guides to training guides to cooks to helpers to even sensitizing horsemen or porters or looking after their safety. That must encompass the whole safety paradigm, and that is when prevention happens, when safety is your top priority. Communication to clients before booking, during bookings, on arrival, on day one, on every day before the trip, to safety checks and briefings, to checking your SPO2s, looking out for symptoms of AMS, of dehydration, just the small things. The devil is in the detail, and that's what contributes so much to prevention. What we need right now is, with rising headlines and accident rates, is to really arrest what is happening in the outdoors. People have to stop getting injured. People have to stop dying in the outdoors immediately. Good practice can stop that. A couple of months ago, a young girl drowned on a stream on the Hamta Pass trek, which has become such a biggie for a time of year where one should really have been thinking twice. But the whole seasonality has changed. Hamta Pass is a raging hit during July, August. And that's probably one of the reasons why that girl got washed away. There was nobody looking after her. She was crossing a stream in the monsoon month. And again, good practice, good policy, good time of year, good seasonality, best trips to run, best time of the year. Just the detailing of that, adopting measures to prevent and mitigate those kind of risks, where you're not running trips out of season and not at the wrong time of the year. Awareness campaigns such as this, we hope that this will be the start of many more, and maybe we can take it pan-India and sensitize governments and companies to take cognizance of this issue, and eventually make India a safe adventure travel destination. Like I mentioned, I mean, post-COVID, all countries are going to be fighting hard to revive their adventure tourism. And if we are going to be set up in the way that we are now, with such headlines, it's going to be a long uphill battle for us to come back in the reckoning. Let's talk about solutions. Access control is possibly the only way out. There are too many people who get access without permission, without registration, and most importantly, without information into our natural heritage. That has to be stopped. That has to be regulated. It needs to have a process. It needs to have a system. Recognized adventure tour operators should be allowed in India's natural heritage. Legitimate outfits that are allowed to take people, that are permitted to take people, and with information. If you're not registered, I'm sorry, but you should not have access to India's natural heritage. Special categories should be created by all states to enforce checkpoints and registrations at all important roadheads. There have been so many cases of people just walking off a roadhead, getting lost, and the Indian Air Force spending crores of taxpayer money trying to locate them. If only there was access control, we would know where the Israeli hiker is. Where was he at that point in the day? We'd know where the gentleman who got lost in Spiti a couple of years ago would have been. It's really quite simple. And it's been done before, and I'll show you how. Restriction of group sizes is critical. Removal of fixed camps. I have personally seen fixed camps in the Govind Vihar National Park, which I reported to the Conservative Forest Yamuna Circle before they were taken off. But how can they be there in the first place, you might ask? What kind of collusion allows this to happen? Why is Rupkund Trail still being operated as of yesterday's report? How is this happening right under the administration's noses? Guide to guest ratios. Why is there not a fix on that? Why are guests not taken care of? Why did that girl drown on the Hamta Pass stream? Why did Padmesh Patil go into coma? Why did Akhil Chadha not be accompanied back to Manali? These are all questions they need to be answered, and they haven't been answered. All accident reporting must be made mandatory to track not only operator record, but for guest safety, for Indian perception safety. We need to be learning, we need to be improving our standards, and we need to do that quick. Entry fees into reserve forest needs to be hiked to break the price war. Funds can be used for cleanup campaigns, keeping trails clean. You've all seen the photos on the Stoke Kangri cleanup. Vinayak led an expedition that cleared 2 tons of garbage from base camp. I mean, how does 2 tons of garbage reach 5,000 meters? Begs the question. Yes. Recognized companies to submit a list of all trekking guides, guide registration and iCards to be mandatory. I should not be allowed to go beyond Kibber for the Parangla if I don't have an iCard, if I'm not registered, if my trip does not have fees paid prior, and if I don't have a day-wise program. No, I should not be allowed. Toilet tents proportion. This is a shocker. There was I showed you that image of about 60 people using 2 toilet tents. I can tell you, no one was using those toilet tents, because I don't know anyone who wants to use a toilet tent which is used by 30 other people. Check for loads, garbage to be carried out. There is no reason why there should not be a return check when you're exiting a roadhead. Did you carry your garbage out? This has been the biggest problem of trails being littered, which led to the High Court ban in Uttarakhand, which still exists, which is still in place. We have not been able to overturn that or show them proof that we are doing something about it. Industry and government have both failed to show the justice system that yes, we are doing something to ensure that garbage will be carried out. Such a simple thing that we've all grown up with, leave no trace, is just completely forgotten right now. Mandatory registration and recognition of operators and trekkers. Why not? That is the only way out. Nepal has such a fantastic system, and they've been at it for 14 years already, and they've made such an impact with their tourism. Why is Nepal such a hot destination for everybody? And why can't we get there? It's a simple system. It's so simple that it's almost amazing that we haven't got it already. It's a database management system which serves as an authentic information center. It collaborates with stakeholders which in turn then controls unethical practices and upgrades your service standard and your perception eventually. I leave you with Robert Swan's quote, "The greatest threat to our planets is the belief that someone else will save it." I think we need to act now and act soon before things get murkier. We can save this, and we must act while we still can. I'm also honored to introduce our eminent speakers for today. I'll introduce them and request Vishwas to take on the speaker session. Dr. Venu Vasudevan, Additional Chief Secretary, is here with us. He's from Kerala and a medical doctor by training. Dr. Venu joined the IAS in 1990. He's presently posted as Additional Chief Secretary of Higher Education and Tourism, Government of Kerala. He has helmed different projects to effectively market Kerala tourism as a global tourism brand and to improve the quality of the tourism and hospitality services in Kerala. It was during his tenure as Director Kerala Tourism and later Secretary Department of Tourism that Kerala transformed its market positioning and built up a strong private-public partnership, culminating in Kerala being recognized by the National Geographic Traveler as one of the 50 must-see destinations of the world. Kerala Travel Mart, the biggest international travel mart in India, is his brainchild. He served the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, and played a pivotal role in formulating the Incredible India campaign. We also have Ms. Rupinder Panu Brar, Additional Director General, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. Ms. Brar is an Indian Revenue Service Officer of 1990. She's presently the ADG Tourism, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India. She has completed her school education between Delhi and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. She studied history as a major subject with focus on modern Indian history at the Delhi University, earned a master's in public administration from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, Singapore, recently completed a degree in law from Bombay University. Ms. Brar has worked in various capacities in New Delhi, Gurugram, Faridabad, Patiala, Ludhiana, and Mumbai. Prior to her being posted in the Ministry of Tourism, she was holding charge as Commissioner of Large Taxpayer Unit Income Tax Department in Mumbai. Ms. Brar has been nominated to attend a number of training programs in India and overseas to hone her work skills. We're delighted to have Brigadier Ashok Abbey, President of the Indian Mountaineering Foundation. Brigadier Abbey has a life built in the Indian Army and a mountaineer of great renown. He epitomizes great mountain values and its ethos. Mr. Abbey is the recipient of the Tenzing Norgay Lifetime Achievement Award for his contribution to mountaineering. Back in 2003, Colonel Abbey then had led the joint Indo-Nepalese Army Everest massive expedition to climb Mount Everest, taking the same path as Tenzing Norgay and Sir Edmund Hillary to mark the 50th year of the first ever summit claim. Ms. Soyti Banerjee is the project editor of Outlook Responsible Tourism Initiative India since 2015. Soyti has been working with public and private stakeholders across India and South Asia to create a community of responsible tourism practitioners contributing to an alternative imagination of travel. A travel and food journalist for over 17 years, Soyti has contributed to the BBC, the Indian editions of Condé Nast Traveler, National Geographic Traveler, and Lonely Planet guidebooks, Outlook, Outlook Traveler, India Today, and Mint Lounge. She has been involved in outreach programs and sustainable tourism policy interventions in the Indian territories of Ladakh, Arunachal, Madhya Pradesh, among others. She was also instrumental in co-hosting an entrepreneurship and skills workshop with the UNWTO on World Tourism Day 2019 in New Delhi. Masters in Literature from St. Stephen's College, Delhi University. She's deeply interested in Indian food, history, indigenous cultures, and sustainability. I'd like to thank all four of you for coming and taking the time out and sharing your thoughts with us. I'm going to leave you with Vishwas. Thank you everyone for your time and for your patience.
Thank you, Vaibhav, for such a powerful insight. I think you've given all of us. And I think a lot of food for thought, I think we will all carry back once we are done with this morning seminar, I think. So good morning, everyone. Once again, I'm back to do my part. I would like to invite Mr. Rupinder Panu Brar to be our first speaker this morning. Ma'am, the floor is yours. Would you carry on from where Vaibhav left to give us more insights as to your understanding on this subject? Thank you.
Thank you, Vishwas. And I think thanks to Weber, he's set such a wonderful tone for the day that there is, as you rightly said, little to be said in terms of repeating what he said, but also taking forward from what has been said. But before that, a very warm good morning to everyone. And we hope that everyone is keeping safe and healthy and good. And keep safing yourself with the masks and make sure that the guard doesn't, so to say, drop in the current times. So with those words, I would like to now start moving into what we are actually discussing today. It was, in fact, a carryover of yesterday. We were in Guwahati as a whole ministry. And one of the sessions and one of the closing sessions was taken by Neerath, and the discussion was around adventure as an opportunity in tourism in the northeastern part of India. And before that, we were in Ladakh just about 3 weeks back, less than 3 weeks. And that was a session, or the entire conference, in fact, had adventure tour operators take the lead in terms of setting the tone for the entire period that we were there for. So that's the kind of importance that is being given, and why not? We've already, I think, had a series of discussions on this. There was a wonderful presentation done by Pradeep Murthy in Ladakh. Yesterday, as I said, Neerath did it. There is clearly a huge opportunity, but the opportunity doesn't seem to be properly leveraged right now by India. And I am reading some of the comments even on the chat box, and we had an extensive conversation both in Ladakh and yesterday in Guwahati, that some of it seems to be such a low-hanging fruit that it kind of sort of almost defies logic, that why is it then that all of us together are unable to beat at least some of the things that can easily be beaten and can be worked upon. So why is it that even small issues of creating the clusters of helplines around the medical issues that are likely to arise, Weber already indicated the kind of things, but why can't we? There is no dearth of medical personnel in India. I'm happy to note that Dr. Venu, in fact, is a doctor by profession, and I'm sure he'll tell us more on that aspect, that there is no dearth of trained medical personnel in India. Why have we not been able to do it? I think that is something we need to work on immediately with all of you after identifying some low-hanging fruit areas where we should work at. Because one thing that came out yesterday, and we had a Mount Everest climber who spoke, and that was also a narrative that came out in the dark, was that if we are going to only talk in a very generic way and say, this is what needs to be done across India, it doesn't really create a workflow sheet. What we really need to do is to target 5, 10, 20 destinations and say, these are those 10 or 15 or 20 that I must immediately work on. So I think that'll give us a more granular approach to the whole thing and have a proper work line, because a lot of these places we'll find actually do have the competencies of carrying to the next level. But every time, if you're going to only talk at a very discussion mode, it doesn't really create a workflow. So that's one of the learnings that I got from the sessions that we had very recently in Ladakh and yesterday in Guwahati, that let's pick some target points. Let's pick places you guys know better as to which are those places that are sort of waiting to happen. So I think that is my first request to all of you, in fact, that can we start working on that? Similarly, for those places, can we start looking at a more targeted training? So that's another discussion that rolled out, that the trainings that the ministry is doing or trainings that are happening are sometimes not very focused. So for these 10 places, can we start picking up the tour guides who are associated with the recognized tour companies? I am going to come on that part of the recognized bit. But can we start creating these 10 places and fit them with the right trained personnel in terms of people who actually have the ability to provide immediate medical care, or do have the ability to reach, arm them and equip them with proper telecommunication equipment, etc., and then start creating the right amount of communication and outreach, both from the provider side and from the receiver side. And that's where I think people like Mandeep are doing fantastic work, where they're building a huge voice for responsible tourism and the responsible traveler. So I think the important part in the training or creating an outreach for the user also is equally important in the adventure segment, so that an adventure doesn't become a misadventure. And how should we generate that kind of knowledge even in a traveler, that before I go for travel, that there are certain requisites or prerequisites that I must also ensure. If I already have certain pre-existing underlying comorbidities, is a word that has come up in COVID times, but then that's something to be understood, that I may not even be medically fit to undertake something. I think that's the kind of responsibility on the medical front that a traveler also needs to definitely take up. Do we need to put that in our essential part of the SOP that a tour operator, an adventure tour operator, perhaps needs to put it in also? But at the same time, the narrative mentioned about the plastic campaign, Mandeep and his team are doing fantastic work around that. In fact, we are trying to put out videos how to make sure that the very nature which we are using, the various elements of topography of our country which we are using, how to make sure that we don't how to make sure that part of the travel that we are undertaking into the adventure zones, how not to mess with nature and take away from the very beauty that we are actually going for. That's where, again, I see a huge role for the government, where we can come in and use our extensive platforms and budgets that we definitely have in creating the right learnings and education for both the providers as well as the users of these services. On the provider bit, I think also we need to create a huge outreach for the users to ensure that they do not go and use the fly-by-night operators, but actually go with the registered ones that are certified either by the central or the state governments, so that a lot of times the incidents that have happened where people have gone ahead and have, maybe because of cost cutting, maybe because we haven't own campaigns, database which needs to be built in a more robust manner so that people have the right tour operators to work on. So I think those are some of the essential to-do things that have come out of Vaibhav's presentation. And my humble suggestion at the end of it is that let us begin small. Let us make at least some places really work. And you help us to identify which are those places which we know are kind of sort of almost ready. Those will then work as templates which can be replicated and repeated in other parts of the country. That is one suggestion from my side, that let's do a more targeted work on this rather than just having conversations, because we all seem to know what to do, but we just don't seem to be putting our energies and synergizing. And wherever we need to work with the Ministry of Environment on this, it would be good to work with them. If we need to work with the Health Ministry to identify some of the local dispensaries, it would be important for us to reach out to them. If we need to work with Ministry of Home and Defense, because some of these areas would be able to leverage, in fact, on the strengths of the Defense Ministry also. I think if we can bring together the 4 or 5 key central ministries and the state governments, where we know that the state governments are more responsive, it would be a way forward for us. So those are some of the thoughts that I want to leave all of you with, and any suggestions now or later, more than happy to take them.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your great insights and some thoughts to how we can carry this forward. Yes, I think one of the important things we are looking at going forward is to be creating rescue centers, in key areas which need to be supported by the local state governments and some local associations. Like Manali is doing a great job. They have the local association in Manali has created a rescue team of their own from all the volunteers, and I think those steps we need to multiply into other destinations. Yes, I think targeted training is very important, which needs to be put into place by all of us together, and ATOAI will work with your office on this in collecting this and moving this forward. I couldn't agree more with that word you mentioned, misadventures. I think we've been discussing last an hour. It's the adventures have turned into misadventures, and that's what I think is the challenge, where we need to all get together and turn it into adventures, which is the real thrill. And so we don't lose people, we don't lose our environment, we don't lose things. So thank you very much, ma'am, for your great insights. And I think this is the first step. As we always say, we learn and we go. With so many minds together, so many people listening, I'm sure that a lot more will come out of this, and we will move ahead. So thank you again. I'm going to invite Dr. Venu next, who was good to have you back, sir, on an ATOI event. We've been missing you, to be honest, for a couple of years, and especially since our last convention in Kerala, where you were instrumental in supporting us, and you've always been a friend of ATOI. And also during a short stint in Delhi when you were there a couple of years ago. So welcome, sir. I'm going to leave the floor to you to give your insights as to what you feel and what you suggest we could be working on as we touch this important subject together. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Vishwas, and greetings to all members who attended this event. Your association is one that is very close to my heart. As Vishwas mentioned, we were privileged to have hosted the conference in better times, and it's always good to get back into this fraternity. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. It was a pleasure, although I could, these days one has to multitask. So I had one eye on the conference and the presentation, and the other eye in a meeting which I had to attend. But I must compliment Vaibhav and the association for putting this issue right up front. Many a time we tend to brush this under the carpet and talk about peripheral stuff. But I think it's very, very vital for all of us, the association certainly fronting and spearheading this initiative, but also I think the ministry, all state governments, all regulators, the forest department, everyone needs to wake up and say that we just can't lose more lives. And I think that's a very, very important point and a key takeaway from what Vaibhav said. In very stark terms, he's placed the issue before us. For me, I think the most important point which I carry back and we are trying to use in the state of Kerala is the fact that this has to be in the hands of authentic, experienced, registered, trained operators. As was brought out, far too many accidents have happened because the visitors were in the hands of inexperienced people. And this is a no-brainer, isn't it? I mean, we should be able to put in place a system where only registered and trained people take this extremely sensitive assignment, this mission of taking people who don't have that experience into places that could be dangerous to life. So I think that is very much the domain of authorities, government, and I think we have been mindful of the fact, and I'll come to that a bit later. But I think the other authorities also, maybe since Rupinderji, has come very strongly across today, I think it's time that we all sat together and created a framework for this. The other thing is, measures to regulate, to mitigate, reduce risk. How do you do that? It's by adopting better procedures and having more training, making sure that every part, every stakeholder, every player in this business, is aware of the expertise and the skill needed, and is trained regularly, repeatedly, and tested perhaps, so to make sure that we take upon ourselves activities that are well within a framework of safety. This is a task that is that associations have to spearhead, because you are the professionals, fellow professionals who can bring in certain specialist elements of training and expertise building. So that's something which I think the associations and individual companies will have to spend time on, invest perhaps, and create that value within the system itself. Of course, awareness campaigns, every customer needs to be extremely mindful of the fact that this is not a walk in the park. So, and we should not even picture this, many a time I have seen that these have, our messaging has been extremely flawed. And I'm not making only a very general statement. I know that most of the association members here are extremely responsible in the way they convey the message, but I have seen extremely irresponsible messaging also, inviting people into undertaking very hazardous, very a small to get into this business, because we believe that adventure tourism in all its aspects is very offers a lot of potential for us. And I must start by saying that
Dr. Venu get stuck, looks like. Vinayak?
Yes, Vishwas seems like he's got a little bad network.
has rendered very valuable service in terms of providing professional inputs. A small team was assigned this job of helping the minister, helping the department. We have an adventure tourism society to create guidelines and the safety and security guidelines, which have been created after a lot of discussions, a lot of research. I think will serve us in good stead. We need to sort of make sure that this framework is used by the entire state. We also have an online registration system so that every operator, every player is registered. I think Vaibhav made a very, very important point about reporting, about every accident needs to be reported and audited. I think that's a very important point. So we hope that through this registration process, which was unfortunately kept to the back burner because of the pandemic, we will come back very strongly into this, and hopefully over the next few months, once the effects of the pandemic lifts, we will have a system where our operators are registered, the guidelines are available for everyone, and the regulatory part we will tighten up in consultation with and in participation of the forest department and other stakeholders who are involved in this business. I think Kerala and perhaps many other states, we are all aspiring to have more of this business, because I know for a fact that I've been forest secretary and I've been discussing with forest people. We believe that we have only scratched the surface of what is possible using the assets within the forest of Kerala, creating different kinds of experience for different segments of visitors. And while we are doing this, we are absolutely mindful of the fact that it has to be done in a very responsible, careful, and systematic way. And in that endeavor, I think we will be guided by professionals like your association and your members who are already partnering with us. And I think together, when the government and the operators come together, I think, and we work very hard in each area, in each region, state, and across, to the country level, we can create an environment that provides an absolutely safe, secure, and enjoyable environment for all. These are my observations. I think there are several other speakers waiting. So thank you very much for having me again, and for your patient listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Venu. It's such a great pleasure listening to you always, and for your foresights always. And I think under you, Kerala has always set a benchmark for everybody to follow in various aspects, and especially what is happening presently in Kerala in the space of adventure travel is commendable. And I think other states need to follow similar ways forward as you adopted. And thank you for being a friend of ATOAI and for the adventure travel community always. Thank you, sir, for being there. Next, I'm going to invite Brigadier Ashok Abbey, who's IMF president and also a person who knows this subject better than anybody. Brigadier Abbey, are you there?
Yeah, very much.
So the floor is yours, sir.
Vaibhav, can you hear me? Vishwas, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good afternoon to all the panelists and all the speakers and anyone who's watching this webinar. Before I begin, I would just like to compliment the ATOAI for conducting this national awareness webinar on a very important topic, which is, India at the threshold of adventure travel. You have identified two themes, and the first one being that if we can manage to keep our safety in place and the environment concerns are looked after, well, nothing really stops India from becoming the best adventure travel destination in the world. And this is a very good premise because these are the two aspects that we really need to address at this time. So how do we keep our mountains safe, and how do we keep those who are engaged in this activity again safe without any loss of life or limb? But I'll come on to this a little bit later. But I also must begin by saying that, when you talk in terms of safety, please understand that, we are talking about adventure activities. And no matter what we do, whatever has to happen in terms of accidents, some of these are unavoidable because that is the nature of the beast. But certainly at our level and all those who are involved in this, you can take measures as rightly brought out by Vaibhav in that very lucid presentation. We can certainly minimize the risk. We can cut down on this avoidable loss of life. I must also share with you that it's not only in India that accidents happen. When I look at the mountain world, just for your information, there have been seven climbers in the French Alps who've been killed, because of an avalanche. Recently, in the month of August, I think on the 18th of August, there's another climber, in the Yoho National Park in Canada, who's lost his life. And similarly in Denali, there have been two climbers again who've gone missing. So the point that I'm saying is that as long as we practice and we undertake adventure sports, certain amount of risks would be there, certain amount of casualties will be there. But that is not to say that we should not, or we should resign ourselves to that fate. We have to ensure that by following the correct protocols, whether it's the guides, whether it is the decision-making, whether it is use of equipment, whether it is, demassification of the mountains, we bring this down to the absolute bare minimum, because any accident and every accident gives us a bad name. I would also just like to, since we are talking to the tour operators community, the adventure tour operators, and this is, a statement, and this is what I would like to say, and I firmly believe in, that, that silo mentality, that, if my company operations go well and someone else, has come under a bit of a problem because of an accident or by not following the correct protocols, I am okay. What we have to realize is that it brings everyone a bad name. It could be the state, it could be the it could well be our country, and it could well be the community, and this is the outside projection. Okay. I will come on to the mountaineering bit, which has relatively been untouched because the Indian Mountaineering Foundation is the apex body for mountaineering in India and certain adventure activities which are allied to mountaineering. It's an old body which came up in 1960, and the mountaineering scenario is a little bit different. I will just briefly give you a gist of this. Now, as you're aware, and those of you who are, a lot of tour operators are registered with the IMF, and your expeditions which keep coming here for clearances, there is a very systematic process and a very regulated process. To begin with, any expedition, whether it's Indian or foreign expedition, it has to come to the IMF for clearance. And clearance is not just given like that. You have to apply. You have to give out the details of the team. You have to give out the qualification of the members. You have to give us the route. You have to give us your time plan. You have to tell us that what is the medical equipment that you're carrying with you? Who are the persons who are qualified with you? So it is not that, you just come and you start climbing a mountain. So mountaineering to that extent is comparatively very well regulated. We have standards laid down, like what will be the size of the team. For example, no team in the Indian Himalayas can be more than 12. And even a solo climber, as of now, is not permitted by the IMF to climb for safety reasons. Minimum 2 and maximum 12. So it's all laid out. It is all, very, very systematic. You have to be briefed. In fact, every foreign expedition has to come to the IMF where the leader is briefed, the team is briefed. Just about 2 days ago, and it's a good news that I want to share with you, that we have the first foreign team which is coming into India to climb. It's a team of 7 climbers which is going to climb Shivling. And they were just briefed here the other day. So it's a very systemic and a regulated process as far as the foreign expeditions are concerned, because in case of a foreigner dying in India, it brings us further a bad name for obvious reasons which you're well aware of. Similarly, as far as the Indian expeditions are concerned, everything is regulated. And we ensure that the QR is strictly followed, that they are meeting the basic requirements of the IMF. For example, the training is structured. In India, you have to qualify from one of the national mountaineering institutes. There is no substitutes for that. Okay, so whether you have a mountain guide, he has to qualify in an advanced mountaineering course. And of course, if he's done other courses like the method of instruction or the search and rescue, which are all recognized, which are all official, well, you have a trained person, a trained guide to begin with. But most certainly, you have to give him that experience, which is a different thing, and I'll talk about it a bit later. That is not to say that accidents don't happen. Accidents have happened, and the insight, if you look at the accidents in 2019 and 20, I'd just like to share with you that accidents in trekking have been more than accidents actually in mountaineering. Now, the reason is very simple, that there are more people who are going into treks, and trekking is something, where the continuum is right from a very basic to a very advanced level trek. Most of them could be young backpackers or seasoned. So depending on where they are going, with whom they are going, trekking, which is far bigger than mountaineering, is slightly different from mountaineering. It's not to say that accidents have not happened in mountaineering. We've had almost about 31 deaths in the last 2 years again, which actually also involves a very, very, I'm sure you would have all heard of this accident in 2019 on Nanda Devi, where a seasoned guide who's been guiding in the Indian Himalayas for years, probably a judgment, error in his judgment. Well, there were 7 foreigners who were actually washed away in that avalanche. So the point that I'm saying is that, we have to undertake, we have to make sure that whatever we do and whatever we follow is not, you just get up and you start walking and you pick up someone and you get onto mountaineering. Okay, I will just come on to, certain issues which I noted and I would just like to comment upon. And I'll be very happy to answer anything, as far as in the question and answer session with regard to mountaineering. But some of the very pertinent issues which were raised by Weber, who actually in his presentation. So please remember, as far as mountains are concerned, there is no massification. The very nature of the activity doesn't really permit that you have hordes, unless you are talking of a mountain like Everest, where you can have 300 to 400 people going up. But in India, that is not permitted. Okay, we are fortunate because we are not a small country like Nepal. Our mountains are huge and we have a lot of variety, from Ladakh to Kashmir to Uttarakhand to Himachal to Sikkim and to Arunachal. And hopefully a lot of these areas are now opening up. We have almost 430 mountains in the open domain where you can pick and choose. And IMF will give you permission in less than 48 hours for that, okay, after following a very streamlined procedure. So the point again I'm saying is that, mountaineering is comparatively far better regulated. It is much better regulated. And to that extent of an uncharted or an unregulated activity are very less as far as mountaineering expeditions are concerned. Checking of permits. Every expedition is issued a permit and the permit has to be checked. Now, where the problem really comes in is, at the state level. Once, say, he goes into a particular state. Now, someone there has to check. In fact, now, just about 3 days back, I've written to the Chief Secretary of Himachal Pradesh, for example, to just make sure that checking in certain areas is a little bit more strict so that you don't have people who are climbing in a clandestine manner. And very often they're not. This is the real reason that we have, people who don't take permission, who bypass, the circuit, and they land up on a mountain to climb on their own. When there's an accident and they ask for air evacuation, the first thing which the Indian Air Force asks the IMF is that, was it an IMF approved expedition? And then, of course, the whole thing starts. So that goes without saying that this is a very, very important issue with regard to regulation and checking of permits. I must share with you that we are getting reports again that, on certain mountains, the numbers are much more because some of the climbers are coming there without permission. And this is happening with the connivance of some of the local tour operators. Now, I don't know who they are, the adventure tour operators. Certainly, they couldn't be the ones with registered who have a very strong and a good ethos of functioning. But possibly, fly-by-night operators or, people who are willing to give the activity at a very, very cheap rate. But they are the ones who actually endanger everyone, and the reputation therefore comes to stake. We are coming out, in fact, we have come out with an accident, recording form, the ARF. It is also going to be shared with the ATOAI community. So you can share this with all the operators that whenever there is an accident taking place in the Indian Himalaya, that form has to be initiated earliest or at least within 30 days of the accident having taken place. And this is going to get to the IMF, and we are going to study it. There is a risk management unit in the IMF which is looking after this in a very, very systematic way. And every year we are organizing a seminar where we are telling the tour operators, the adventure enthusiasts to come and listen and see as to how best you can minimize, your accidents and lessons to be learned. Similarly, as far as cleaning of the mountains is concerned, I was really quite surprised to see what Vaibhav had to show, but this is a fact. Because when you don't have toilets for people, you are actually promoting open defecation in the mountains. And this is actually the worst thing which can really happen, because not only are you polluting the water bodies, you are actually contaminating the water bodies with all kinds of things. So it goes without saying that this is something very important. And it's just a small advice to the tour operators that look on to the Indian Army motto of having, the shallow trench latrines, which are very convenient, very functional for short duration. Of course, more on this, we will again talk later. Leaving mountains clean is mandatory. Whether you climb or not is a different matter. In fact, for the good mountaineering expeditions, even fixed ropes and equipment that you leave on the mountains is actually treated as garbage. Not garbage, but equipment which could have been, retrieved, so that the mountain environment is left clean. But on certain mountains, because of safety, this is not, applicable, and you have to perforce leave certain carabiners and ropes and, ironmongery, etc., to make sure that, the climb is not affected. But the garbage has to be absolutely cleaned. And again, I'm happy to share with you that this morning we've started off with an LO course, which is going on, and some of the tour operators from your fraternity will also be coming to interact with them. And one of the main things that we are telling them is to ensure that with all the foreign expeditions, the garbage is brought down to the road head. It is brought down. The LO is to ensure this is a fundamental part of his duties. So the idea is to make sure that this gets ingrained into the system, and that garbage is not left there at all. Coming on to nature experience, I think Weber touched a very, very important point, that at the end of the day, why are we going to climb? Why are we going to trek? We are going to climb, we are going to trek because we are there. We are there to enjoy nature. And if you have, people who are either being guided or being conducted or going on their own, this is not going to happen. So this is again for the environment, which has to be educated, that you are coming for a trek, but if you want to climb with those massive groups of 35 to 40, then why are you here for? Why are you actually here in the first place? Where is your nature experience? In other words, somewhere down the line, we have to come on to a mechanism where we reach out to the environment and tell them that this is something which you need to shun. Standard of guides, a very important issue. Well, in India, as of now, we don't have the concept of, for example, you have the International Federation of Mountain Guides or the IFMGA, which is abroad, where there are trained and certified people who conduct such events. But in India also, we are going to be getting to that stage very shortly. But till such time that happens, it is again, up to the tour operators who employ, your guides to make sure that your guides are not only trained, but their skills are validated by you from time to time. If someone has done an advanced mountaineering course or a search and rescue course or whatever he has done, the fact is that his skills, whether he's a rafting guide, whether he's a climbing guide, whether he's a trekking guide, the skills have to be validated. And you have to, in your organization, you have to reach out and evolve those mechanisms as to how are you going to make sure that the sword edge remains the cutting edge and that they are, good. Similarly, for the clients, again, very important and is rightly brought out by one of the speakers, that it is not only the standard for guides and those who are going, it is also for the clients when you are coming to come and join a trip. What is the minimum standard that you expect, or that minimum preparatory standard, that you are telling him to come prepared with in terms of his physical fitness, and most importantly, in terms of his mental preparedness. Equipment, again, I don't have to say anything. It's a very important aspect of safety. In India, we are, duty bound to make sure that, only certified equipment is used by all agencies. And in case that is not done, and especially in mountaineering, where we ensure that it is only UIA certified or a CE certification, if the UIA certification is not there, that such equipment is used. So cutting corners on this, whether it is to save costs, etc., is something counterproductive. My last point is regarding the communication. Everything hinges in these adventure activities on communication. If your guide can communicate to his client, and mind you, I'm not talking here of seasoned mountaineers going on a 2-man alpine style climb or a 4-man alpine style climb. I'm talking about people who are actually being guided. And that is very important. I must share with you, about 3 days ago, we got an SOS call from a mountain in Garhwal called Sathopant, where a team was climbing. And we were given an information at the IMF that there are 2 members who are sick at Camp 1, and they would possibly require evacuation by force. So we were contacted and we set the ball rolling to get that. But I must say, and I must compliment the conducting agency, which it was a guided climb, wherein they could read those signs. The guides could pick up the early signs of that sickness, and they could manage to bring them back to base camp, and they are absolutely okay after losing altitude. So these are also instances which are happening in our country, but it all depends, from companies to companies and how you really look at it. Last but not the least, at an average, as far as the Indian Himalayas are concerned, if we take an average of over the past 2 decades, we have had 60 foreign expeditions, 60 Indian expeditions, which have come in at an average, who are actually climbing in the Indian Himalaya. And of course, the foreign average is about 40. But I do hope that once this COVID goes away, which is as important as your safety and as important as your having the correct practices, things will come back to normal. I would just like to end with a very small quote of what a very famous climber in 1865 called Edward Whymper, after the climb of Matterhorn, said, This was a climb which went up, and it had, actually Mike Carroll, a French guide who was part of this team. And it was a disastrous fall wherein, 4 climbers fell to their death. And in 1865, the British Queen, the Queen was asked to ban mountaineering because they saw the sport nothing else but, just losing lives and all about. But this is something which, is just to share with you what he said after the climb. He said that whenever you get to the mountains and whenever you climb, prudence is a must. You must prepare well and think from the very beginning that what could be the end of this venture should things go wrong. This is the gist of what he said. And I think that applies to everyone, that whenever we set into the wilderness to climb, we must be very clear and do our homework and be very sure that if things go wrong and if we do and take any shortcuts, for whatever reason, what the end state could be. And that is something which we all need to take care about. So thank you very much for listening to me very patiently. I look forward to the question answer session. Back to you, Vishwas.
Thank you so much, Brigadier Saab, for such straight talking and powerful views you put out. I think what I am beginning to understand is that we are all speaking the same language and we're all looking at the same thing as we take these steps, So thank you very much again, and I'm sure we're going to come back to Q&A, so please stay around with us a little bit more later. Last but not the least, I have Soyti here. I always say keep some things good for the last, Soyti, with all your experience and all your work you've done in the outdoors and in this field, we are all looking forward eagerly to hear your thoughts and your views. Over to you, Soyti.
Thank you so much, Vishwas. And before I begin, I really do want to thank ATOAI for bringing to the fore such an important topic, and for Vaibhav to really underline the most important problems that that we ought to address right now, right here. And I think it's the time was yesterday, so the time is now. That's really, it's a fantastic thing that you're doing. So congratulations to all of you. A lot of ground, of course, has already been covered. All of you have said so many things, and there's a lot to learn. I've certainly learned a lot already. I wanted to draw attention to a few things that, because of my background in communication and my training in communication, that is perhaps the biggest burr in my saddle. And I think that's also one area which all of us, everybody here has already, at least once spoken about, which is awareness, and awareness for the travelers, awareness for the customers. And I don't think that it is the responsibility of the public authorities and, of people like us at the Outlook Responsible Tourism Initiative or at TSOI, or, it's your responsibility as much as anybody else's. So it would be wonderful if you, if you join this conversation as well, and you engage your travelers, you engage people through social media, through your website as well, because we need sustained positive communication on risk and safety to ensure that the travelers ask the right question. Because no matter how many changes operationally that you bring in, if they aren't asking the right questions, if they are still choosing a trip because it is cheaper than something else, we can't hope to bring any kind of change. And this is not an easy path. It will take maybe a few years for this to gain momentum, for it to for it to reach all the people that it needs to reach. But I don't think it's impossible. It's happening in the space of sustainability already. COVID has given it an impetus. We're talking more about responsible tourism. We're talking more about sustainability. Adventure is, part of that as well. So, we just have to talk about safety and sustainability in this context as well. It's important, therefore, to also understand the profile of the new generation of travelers who are opting for these trips. I think this is we all know it. Everybody has a sense that, it's, the young executive, the person who's, sort of joined his first job, or friends who can afford a cheap trip. And rough estimates, I just saw an estimate somewhere one of these days that it's 75% of these people who are signing up for these trips are beginners. I know that Webb have talked about it as well, and in a lot of cases I find that the fact that they're beginners is I understand that it's not a problem, that there are grades of treks that you can do, but at the level of the operators, it's clearly something that they're willing to overlook. So and on through their social media, you can see that they're talking about it. They're saying that beginners can be fit too, so don't be dissuaded. Or you have a high BMI, don't worry, I had a high BMI, but I managed to do this trek, so you can do it. So there is this tendency to overlook these things just because there's nobody watching, nobody asking you these questions. At the checkpoint, you're just buying a ticket and walking in, if there is a ticket to begin with. So we need to ask these questions. Also, a lot of these people I find are communicating in vernacular languages. We are all English speaking, we're an English speaking community primarily here today. And I know that many of us consider, this is a low hanging fruit. English speakers are opinion shapers. All of that might be true, but just open your eyes and see it on YouTube, the content that is getting created on Quora platforms, even on aggregating platforms. You'll find that people are now creating sections in Bengali and Gujarati, and not just in Hindi of course. So all this communication also has to be in vernacular languages. This is something that I think we ought to make a note of. And I think I had said this in the beginning, that the communication has to be positive. And this is a thumb rule for all communication. It is a thumb rule for all of us, that it has to be positive, because our eyes glaze over when we see another mound of plastic, right? And plastic anyway is the lowest hanging fruit. There's so much else that is unsustainable, that is being ignored. So many camps, you're covering so many places all the time. I mean, you're covering ground. So I mean, there are a host of other issues. But the truth is that we are tired of seeing negative pictures. And while it might shock people for a moment, it doesn't have a long-term impact. I was talking to a sports academy, a water sports academy, and in Tamil Nadu, and he was telling me that one of the village panchayats actually put out these, they blew up pictures of dead people and put it up there on a beach to dissuade others from going there. I know, I mean, all of you are travelers as much as travel operators as well. So you will understand this as well. I mean, is that the right approach? Should we be putting up pictures of dead people to dissuade people? People, and look at the kind of communication that today travel is about. Whether it's a travel magazine or a travel operator, look at Instagram, which is the primary space that we are consuming travel content from. What is it doing? We're looking at least in the last few years, we've just been looking at oversaturated, fantastic, beautiful images with a short caption, right? There's not enough scope to do more. More people are expecting it, more people are getting it. They just want pretty pictures of a pretty place that they can go to. But we have to cut through that. We have to find a way to communicate to an audience that is being fed that kind of content throughout, and to communicate and engage with them at a deeper level. Because to be honest, I took some time out this week to just quickly look at a few websites and Instagram feeds of a few of the top adventure companies in terms of volumes, including aggregators, right, who have the least liability, who really don't care beyond a point, who are only interested in offering you 2 nights, 3 days for under 2,000 rupees. I've actually seen something like that. So I was looking at the kind of communication that they're doing. Yes, there are a couple of them who are trying to talk about sustainability. Some of it does seem a little bit like an overcompensation or a sort of crisis management oriented communication. And in other cases, it does seem earnest and sincere. So I can't completely dismiss them, but a majority of them don't even talk about it. It's not part of their communication. Safety, if you want to see their safety regulations or policies, you have to scroll down to the bottom of the website and look for it under About Us. It's not upfront. It's not something that they take pride in, and that's what we need to do. They'll have to take pride in the fact and they'll have to be forced, as a community to, to have to do that. They can't stand out as the only people who are not addressing this primary issue. So I was looking at it, and I realized that even, something like faking a fitness test, which is something that clearly is happening on a regular basis for these large scale operations. They are aware of it. They themselves are writing up blogs saying, we don't know how to address it, please let's talk about it. And then you have, they're using humor. Others are also using humor to communicate, which is great. I mean, humor is great, but to what end? That's the question. So if you are talking about faking, fitness tests, is it, and there are people in the comment section who are saying, yes, hey, guess what? I faked a fitness test as well. There is a problem somewhere. So the communication is not enough. If somebody is capable of, on a public platform, to raise their hand and say, yes, yes, of course, we fooled you too, there is a problem somewhere in that communication, and that needs to be addressed. And this has to be done across board. We'll have to take everybody on board. We can't leave, because these people are not going to magically disappear. There will be space for, there will have to be space for everyone. So the question is, how do we regulate, and also how do we communicate? Both of these things will matter. As for awareness of the operators, I find that, I am in touch with so many people across the country in different geographies with different challenges. I do this on an everyday basis, talking to people, trying to understand what's happening, keeping a tab on things. And I find that, they tell us that their competitors or people they know don't even attach enough value to, to the subject, to the need for training, to the, to certification. There is this sort of as someone called it, a, cowboy attitude, know-it-all attitude, because we've done it a few times, we can do it again. So, so how do we reach out to that and, that audience? And that's something that I think ATOAI and IMF and, these organizations are best, best placed to do. I know IMF has been running courses, for instance, online courses, and in these, post-COVID times, so many of us are, are open to education online. So many people are open to it. So perhaps there, there is merit in considering doing something elementary, a basic level course, which is pre-recorded with some amount of mentorship thrown in, that you can integrate through ATOI, and, we could all partner to do this. I mean, as a media organization, we could partner with you. As as organizations which are at the state level, you could partner with them to do this, to encourage more people to do these courses. So I don't know. I mean, that's a thought. You'll be best placed to know whether it'll work and whether it's whether it's possible to put it together. But I really do think it's a matter of a one-time investment, and it won't take a lot given the kind of experience that all of you put together have. Finally, I mean, we're talking about technology. Web have talked about the TIMS platform that Nepal has. Nepal, of course, also has, several other systems that work very well for them. But technology has become so easy. It's just a, it's a sitting duck. We just need to adopt it to perhaps create an auditing platform. How do you, I mean, could that be something? There are sustainability or impact mapping tools that are easily available all over the globe, right? You can measure your carbon in a second today. It doesn't take that much effort. You just have to Google, and there is a yardstick somewhere, or a, or something that you can quickly just feed in some data and get information. So is it possible to institutionalize some of that into an auditing tool, at least to begin with? I mean, of course, you'll need to do physical auditing, and that takes effort and bandwidth. I don't know if any of the organizations are willing or, have the time and resources to do it, but it's worth exploring. And then there are, of course, issues like, I mean, this is a word that I've heard, recently from a friend, and, again from others in the past, zoning. Is it something that perhaps could help, at least in the space of, let's say, water sports? And I feel like it's already organically happening in the space of trekking. There are those of you who know that some of these trails are overcrowded, are avoiding them by default. You're not going there because your travelers will not get as, will not see what they have, they have gone all the way to see. So you are not taking them there. It's almost organically, there is a separation that is happening. So can we think about zoning? I know it's not a comfortable topic, but it's something that perhaps could be looked at as well. And yes, I mean, there are several other, I'm not going to go into several other things. I know that you are already talking about satellite phones on the chat, chat window I saw, and there was conversation on resource consent in New Zealand and mandatory medical forms and so on. So I'll leave that to the experts. But all I want to say is the rules are there. ATOI set out, put out these fantastic guidelines, right, which is accessible to everybody. If these guidelines are adopted, if they are supported by the ministry, this should be something that all the states should adapt, and it should be something that should be encouraged and done. And I don't think I've said this on a public platform before, but and I'll end with this. I've perhaps spoken for quite a bit now. I was 14, I think, or yeah, I was perhaps 13 or 14 when I went for my first trek. It was a school group, and of course I grew up in Jamshedpur, so we were very lucky to have access to people like Bachendri Pal and Premlata Agarwal and so on later. So we were, as young girls, we had role models right before us, and we were climbing up the Dalma to do cleanups back then as well. This is several years ago, as you can imagine. But I have also been on other treks through the, what was called then the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, etc., etc. And all I want to say is that there was this culture, which I know that all of you are part of. There was this culture of, and culture and pride of being people who loved the mountains, people who loved the outdoors. There was a sense of pride, and I think that's what needs to be brought back. And even those who are joining in who don't really know, they are probably, it's out of ignorance and not necessarily out of any other thing. So if somebody who's just a beginner and coming into the fold, we need to welcome them and show them the way. And the onus is on us to communicate that properly and to do it through positive communication. So thank you so much. I hope I've shared a few thoughts that that might be of use to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Soyti. This was really, really enriching, to be honest. And I think surely ATOI is going to reach out to you as we go forward in putting the message out through your medium and helping us put the word out to as many people as possible. Yes, I think you raise a very important point where you say we need to, as a community, we need to engage with the new generation, the new entrepreneurs, the new people who are going into the outdoors. And I think if we communicate with them in the right perspective, and this is a long process, these things don't happen overnight, and we put the message out to them as what we are starting today, I think a change will happen. But I would say these are baby steps or the first steps in that direction. Finally, as you said, it should have happened. It should have started yesterday, but it's never late to start something good. But every change came at a price, as we see in history. So is this change starting with the efforts of ATOI. So thank you, all the speakers, for your great inputs, great thoughts. I think this is being recorded. We will collaborate on that together and move ahead. So I'm going to give this back to Vaibhav now. He's eagerly waiting to start speaking again. I'm sure he's got lots of thoughts, and he loves talking, as he has absolutely noticed. So Vaibhav, back to you, and thank you all the speakers this afternoon. Well, I think it's afternoon already, yes, this afternoon.
Thank you, Vishwas. Thank you, Dr. Venu, Brar, Brigadier Abbey, Soyti. It was wonderful hearing your views. We can open out to Q&A. We've got some questions already, and I've got a few that have been sent to me. I think Sarab Walia sent a question: why is it so hard to implement minimum qualifications to enter the space? From an instructor guide's point of view, why invest in training when salaries don't go up? From a business owner's perspective, the client doesn't pay more for better trained teams to attract high financial ticket. Where is the incentive? So I think Sarab, you're here, right? So I think the onus of training should fall on the operator. I don't think it can be correlated to what the company charges the guest. Which is why a price war is the worst thing to encourage good team leaders, to be spawned, because it's it's hard if you just look at it from a cost perspective. It cannot be looked at, it has to be looked at as an operational expense. It cannot be like a cost that you have to bear on behalf of your instructor. It's a cost that you have to bear on behalf of your operation throughout. So, so I think maybe that viewpoint needs to be changed, and every company should have instructors that are current with their qualifications. And let's not forget, this is still first generation team leaders, first generation business owners, first generation entrepreneurs in adventure travel. So so yeah, it's probably a shorter window to look at it as like what's going to happen in the future. From whatever little I've seen great team leaders get spawned, go on to do lots of things, as long as the environment they're in makes sure that they stay current and encouraged in their pursuit.
May I say something?
Yes, please.
Sorry. So I think I just feel, sir, that we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. It exists. It works perfectly well in a lot of other countries. Things like TAFE exist out there. Vocational institutes exist, and they're backed by law. So that's what's important. The moment we put the onus on the operator itself or the organization, it starts to cut into their profit space. And at least the 20 years that I've been in this field, I've seen that is what seems to hurt why somebody would put a person through training. So, and you know this very well, that training is not cheap. It's a pretty costly space to get into, whether you're doing first aid or whether you're doing activity specific. So I'd say that we need to look at, models like TAFE that exist, that are backed by law, saying the entry is, there has to be a gatekeeper system. Otherwise, just anybody just gets in and starts running regardless of the activity. And then we end up with all that you've mentioned in your presentation. So my urge is actually looking at and making this a profession. And one of the signposts of a profession is there is a gatekeepership. I mean, nobody can just walk in and be a surgeon tomorrow or be a doctor. How can you be an outdoor educator without any pre-qualification? That's the point.
Okay, no, lovely. So that's a great new approach, and let's set up a meeting to chat about it. We'd love to hear more about it, Sarab, for sure. We've got Prateek Hira asked a question: how to convert illegitimate adventure operators into legitimate? Can we not have a structured learning program that is endorsed by MOT? So I think, Prateek, as soon as we have some level of access control and registration, a lot of this might fall into place. Like Brigadier Abbey said, every trip that's going out has a program. We know where they are, what dates, who all are going, how many people, etc. Who's the trip leader, which is the company. I think a lot of that might get solved once we have the blessings of the ministry and the states to implement that system. Swati Lange, are you here? Yes. You asked, at the risk of, if it recognizes that the outdoor industry needs more attention, and that should mean committed full-time attention to the job of the association. Accountability can work top-down. If recognizes that Mount Everest is not an ideal example and we can learn from Nepal's mistakes. Share more. Right. Okay. Thanks for these suggestions. We'll have a look at it, Swati. If you have any question now, we can answer that now. Or anyone else has questions, please feel free to chime in.
Well, if anybody has any questions for the speakers, they're all still here. That would be appreciated. Anybody has any question for the speakers, please go right ahead.
Yeah, I raised the hand actually electronically, but I'll lower it. Am I good to go, Webha? Okay. So yeah, excellent. Again, as I said in one of the chats or tweets somewhere, it's not too early this session, and I just have to be a little bit harsh on ourselves, because both, I think, some of us who are the earlier people in adventure travel do carry a albatross around our neck even now on seeing where this industry has gone. So to that extent, I would say to the association that perhaps it is really something we need to strategize and not just look for small answers. There've been meetings about this. There've been talks about all these issues in the past. So I would encourage, Vishwas and the team now to come out with a timeline and which talks of strategy. And I just want to lay out 4 or 5 points where I see the issues are, and we need to focus there. One obviously is that the state governments have obviously confused giving encouragement to an adventure tour operators coming into the fray because it is Rozgar. It is not just Rozgar, it is with a huge responsibility. And I think that has been the biggest gap, which unfortunately has never been taken on at the seriousness that it needs to be taken on with the ministry to enforce it at the state level. I know we have talked about it in the past, but what I'm saying is our priority is until a volcano doesn't erupt or an earthquake doesn't happen, we don't seem to read the indicators. So even now, there are many indicators which I've personally flagged to you all before. I think the fact that we are not being able to do a national campaign with the ATOAI logo, which says that go with these operators who are members and certified, I think we've lost a little bit of ground there. So it's not too late if we can convince Rupinder Pannu, Brar and the Ministry of Tourism to come on board. And just like we've asked them and they've agreed on the National Campaign for Responsible Traveler Guidelines, which Soyti talked about, I think we are not only doing that, but we are also developing an app. And it's very important for every player in the country to really take it over and pass it on to their travelers. And it's going to come into vernacular, Soyti, so don't worry about that. And because we've had problems in the past with the Ministry of Environment and Forests, we have joined with the United Nations Environment Program to bring the MOEFCC and the MOT on the same table, because otherwise our ecotourism policies or whatever don't really mesh. And the other point I want to say is that obviously we know where the issues are. So whether it is companies doing some wrong actions, or when we see something like, price points which are $1,000 a day for trekking, obviously there's no space for carrying your garbage out or spending that kind of money. So I think what I would really be interested is at the end of today, whatever micro and macro, we need a strategy in place. We need to see who's going to do what and come up with a timeline so that at least we can say we are not going to start putting band-aids on all these wounds again, but a really proper surgery needs to be done on adventure travel operation the way it is happening today. Thank you.
Weber, carry this forward.
Mrs. Brar, would you like to take that on? She might not be here. Any other questions?
Abhay has raised his hand and Pratik Gupta.
Please go ahead.
Can I go and elaborate the thing that I wanted to highlight?
My suggestions will be, because we have time constraint, so it should be more, if you have a question, let's please ask. Let's not do the comment, because that will take a lot of time, Thank you.
Any questions, everybody?
Hi, Vaibhav, can I ask a question? Pratik this side.
Please do.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Vaibhav. Thank you, ATOAI, for organizing this. I hope I'm audible. And again, just on the matter of, and I have to thank Akshay again, because he was pivotal, I think, personally for my side to mentor us when we started. So quick, because this topic obviously is very close to our heart, because we work in adventure safety for last 4 or 5 years now. And we have seen many accidents, we have seen many changes, and we are working extensively in the field to sensitize not only operators, trekkers, but the associations as well as the local government bodies as well. So my question is, we are working, like Weber mentioned about Chadar, there was 9 deaths or double-digit deaths which were happening, let's say pre-2018, 17 or level. But after we worked closely with ATOAI, All Ladakh Tour Operators Association, and the local wildlife, as well as the local administration under the guidance of Miss Avni Lavasa, who was the district magistrate at that time. In 3 years' time, in fact, in last 2 years, there was 0 deaths reported on Chadar trek, right? We sort of worked, put insurance, high altitude medical rescue centers, as well as there was obviously a checkpoint wherein the garbage was checked. How much garbage, how much food you are taking in, how many porters you are taking in with the people, and how much garbage you are bringing back with you. So obviously there was huge cleaning expedition after that as well, but then we are seeing changes. But it has to be implemented by the bodies because no one is willing to take, do it on their own, right? It was, something which was imposed as part of the permit there. So we see from double-digit deaths, from super garbage, super littering everywhere on Chadar to cleanest Chadar we have seen. 0 deaths reported in last 2 years and 1 death in 2019. So 19, 20, 21, 3,140 people went on Chadar in 19. 2,400 people went on Chadar, and these are exact figures because we did insurance for them. So 2,400 people went in 2020, and this year 1,600 odd people went. And out of all of those, 1 death. And due to, of course, AMS, it can happen to anybody. He was supported by the doctor as well, but unfortunately,
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you here, but we are looking at questions here, not a.
So I'm actually asking
so we need a short of time. Sorry.
So I'm also suggesting a solution as well as this has been implemented, sir. So my question is, we are looking, because of unfortunately Corona, we were coming up with few more projects, honestly, on this scale. My question to all the stakeholders, including Ms. Brar, Vishwasji, you, of course, Brigadier Abbey, is that how these associations or government bodies help us implement these projects in various pain points. As Ms. Brar said, we have pinpointed, or ATOI can pinpoint, wherein we can work with the associations and the local bodies and the operators, because they are the ones who are doing it on the ground, the local ones, so that we can stop and avoid 99.9% of accidents which are happening right now. That's my, how can we get help in terms of monetary, in terms of licenses, in terms of permits, so that we can expand these programs in different locations. And my second question is, right now as an insurer, we don't know what kind of permits are required to enter a certain area, let alone the trekkers. So if ATOI could come up with a page where in a different region, what kind of permits are required to enter, then it is mandatorily, we can circulate that to our customers saying that, okay, you are going on this trek, please look into this page, have your, do you have these permits because you're entering this area, so that IMF permits are there, ATOI or local association permits or wildlife forest fees have been paid for. So that questions will be raised against the operator saying that, look, I am paying for these, where are my, receipts for them? So these are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Vishwas, you'd like to take that on? Or Brigadier Abbey?
No, I think I'm okay. Somebody else needs to take this.
I will just clarify one aspect, especially which pertains to mountaineering. And there is no doubt that insurance is a very important aspect of any adventure activity, because at the end of the day, it's a high risk activity. And especially for mountaineering, you could require that air evacuation anytime. You could be hospitalized depending on what the complication is. So I think again, for example, at the IMF, when we are giving permission, we are actually reaching out to the expedition team and suggesting to them that what they should, how they should actually register themselves, or how should they get the insurance cover, which is going to be to help them. And but at the end of the day, it is something that needs to be kind of legislated if required, that anyone venturing into such activities, especially for mountaineering, which I said is high risk, and maybe other activities also which can be identified, you have to do this. It has to be done. There is no other way. And the insurance cover could vary, because a lot of expeditions, a lot of teams, a lot of clients cannot really afford those prices, which could be required to give you that good cover. So I think that will go a long way in making it safe, and it's a good backup to the person who's also going or who's doing that activity. So, but it all depends, and as rightly said, that what is it that we want to legislate, and what is it that we need to lay down. There could be difference of opinion in this, what I've just said. But I think it's something which we need to look into, and all the stakeholders have to sit down together to address this a very important issue. Thank you, Vishwas.
Any more questions, folks?
Hello, can I ask something?
Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hi, this is Rakesh from Outdoor Adventure Indore. This is regarding the Chadar track, because I have done the 2 times this Chadar track in 18 and 19. 18 there was no insurance and everything is there, so it was wonderful. On 19 we got a tremendous problem, and we have the insurance, but just to ensure the insurance agency to provide the more services at the inside, because one of our fellow members got a very health sickness, and at the tip cave there was only 10-in-1 oxygen cylinder available. They don't have any injections, medicines, or anything. So we are having all the medicine with me. Even 2 doctors are along with me, so they have given a lot of injections, and 4 to 5 years whole night we have to make it inside the tent and all. So just a request to the insurance provider, just keep one doctor and some Dairy-Fine and Dextona kind of SOS, injections over there at the top. Only 10 oxygen cannot provide this, full support. Thank you.
Fair enough, valid point, and maybe we can take this offline, Prateek, and have a separate discussion on this. Thanks for bringing this up, Rakesh.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Vaibhav, can I ask a question? This is Dilshad.
Yes, please, Dilshad, go right ahead.
Sorry, no video because I'm driving, but quick question. I think there is no denying the fact that these large trekking companies that you have talked about, who take 30, 40, 50 people on back-to-back expeditions, there is no denying the fact that in the last 8 years, these kind of trekking companies have opened up the market for trekking across India and got more people interested. My question is, we as operators, are we able to find that sweet spot between getting larger number of people interested and a price point that they would be able to come with, which is obviously going to be much higher than what we are doing right now, what they are doing right now. But is there a sweet spot that the operators together can come up with?
So,
sorry. To ban 10,000 people from trekking just because they can't afford to pay 80,000 rupees as opposed to 25. What is this? I don't think that's the solution. So what is it that we can do as operators, as an operating community, to come up with a sweet spot pricing for these people?
So there are 2 aspects to your question, Dilshad. The first is, of course, one cannot deny anyone rights to India's natural resources. Every citizen has an equal right. I think the only thing we can look out for is that if those 10,000 people are going to the outdoors, then it needs to be done in a manner that is somewhat regulated. We cannot have, 6,000 people spending 6,000 nights over a season and leaving the area, absolutely distraught and finished. And as a result of which, greater losses happen when bans come in and when we're not allowed to work in an area. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, go in by all means, but go responsibly and come out, with all your trash, follow SOPs, protocols. So I think that's the fine line, to find that balance between running the numbers that the industry needs to run, spread out over trails, different seasons, and just work responsibly. I think what's happening is that there's just not enough protocol. There's no SOPs, there's no protocol, and it hasn't been there for a while. The second part of your question was the sweet prices, the sweet spot that you spoke of. I think there is a big market out there. There is a large Indian domestic audience that is going out, and there are all kinds of people. I think there are people who don't like to go in groups that are 20, 30, even 16. The level of customization that we are seeing now is huge. So there is, I think what we view as the benchmark of conveyor belt operation, that is no longer benchmark. I think there's enough room for operators to find their own sweet spots depending on the services that are being offered. So maybe the other way to look at it is, let's not look at any benchmark. Let's create our own benchmarks based on our standards and our services. Maybe that's the way to look at it.
Vaibhav?
Yes?
I just wanted to sort of chime in there for a second. You mentioned that there are people who are joining these groups and are not really happy about the fact that they're part of this, busloads of travelers going to the same place. Because I was just deep diving into these, Facebook groups and Quora platforms and, other such places. I saw a lot of this because, you will have to look a little harder, but there are a lot of people saying exactly this. So you're absolutely right. And there's enough evidence to, prove that, even though clearly the companies that operate online have a very strong SEO and, back end, mechanism, which ensures that you don't, you only read positive communication about them, when you generally look for a trek or, about their own background, etc. But there is definitely, you're absolutely right, that there are many people who are part of this, who are just waiting to be shown the direction. So it's just about, reaching out to them. I know it's not easy. I make it sound much easier than it is, but you know what I mean. I mean, if they're there,
Okay, I'm glad you've seen this yourself. So, Dilshad, does that answer your question? Anybody else?
Vaibhav, can I just interject?
I have a query.
Yeah. Can I just say something?
Yes, sir.
The first thing that you mentioned, that you cannot deny anyone his ability or his choice to go to any part which is open, and wherever he wants to do, is absolutely, you're right. But in case he is being conducted by someone, then someone who is taking him, whether he's a novice or whether he's a trained person or he has a lot of experience, that aspect has to be looked into very seriously by the tour operator.
Absolutely.
Second issue is that, and I have observed this again with years of climbing in the Himalaya, that it is not necessary that a big group, what I mean to say, that if there is a big group and it conducts itself responsibly, well, it could have a minimum impact on the environment. And you could have a case where in a small team, smaller numbers, and they could end up wrecking an area. So again, we come back to that question, and I think Dilshad's question is also probably related to, something called the carrying capacity at any given time of a particular area. This is very important, because a trail which cannot, take, or which cannot handle, the numbers beyond a point, if you are going to overload that, well, then there is going to be a big kind of a backlash, and this is going to kill the environment. So this is something which really needs to, we need to look into it, especially in the difficult areas. There's no problem because only trained people will venture. But where this massification is taking place and on these trails, there has to be some kind of a limit to the carrying capacity at any given time. For example, at the Gangotri National Park some years ago, I don't know whether they're doing it now or not, they said that only so many people will be allowed to go beyond the checkpoint to Gomukh and back. And when they return, well, tomorrow, so we can go. So there are ways and means, by which we can regulate. But most importantly, again, it depends on the tour operator. It depends on the handling agency, how they sensitize their clients. What are that issue which you brought out, about the toilets? I mean, this is just a case wherein, you are actually contributing to the degradation of the environment. So I think we need to look at these, all holistically, but carrying capacity is something very important. It has to be identified. And thereafter, we have to move accordingly. That's all, please. Thank you.
Absolutely well said, sir. Folks, we are running out of time now. So if we have more questions, very happy to take them offline. Please email us. We'll send you a copy of the recording. And I would, before we wind up, I'd like to call our Senior Vice President, Mr. Rajesh Ojha, say a vote of thanks. Thank you all so much for your time, and thank you for coming. It's been wonderful. Rajesh.
Rajesh, unmute yourself, please.
Good afternoon, friends. I know we have taken much longer time to finish, so I will be quick to say my vote of thanks. But before I thank our esteemed panel of experts, let me first show my great appreciation to friends from adventure travel industry and friends of adventure travel industry who joined today. I thank you from bottom of my heart for registering in such large numbers to show your support as well as your concern for the issue at hand. We all know that our future generations are looking at us to give some semblance of balance and show some acts of responsibility in organizing our adventure travel as well as the world around us. I thank the panel of experts in readily accepting our invite, showing their deep concern for spreading this awareness. Dr. Venu has been a big friend of ATOAI. I always fondly remember him for the help he personally and that of Kerala State extended for our 2017 convention in Kochi. So many thanks for participating today. Brar ma'am, thank you for accepting our invite. I will also like to extend the appreciation of the association for the recent Ladakh conclave and the just concluded Assam event. You and MOT are creating platforms for discussion and propagating of adventure travel. We look forward to support from you as always. I am sure we will impress upon the government to start a conversation to find a structured solution to this problem. Brigadier Abbey was our first port of call when the new team took over. New team of ATOAI took over in January. IMF and ATOAI have always worked together, but sir, you have galvanized that effort. Many thanks for gracing us with your presence and giving your views in your inimitable style. Soyti, while thanking you personally for today's participation, I must appreciate the great amount of work Outlook Responsible team is doing in the area of sustainability. Your platform is flagging major issues and bringing new ideas to the table. We look forward to great work that you guys are doing. Thank you. I must thank the various state tourism departments which have joined today, a special mention for MP, Uttarakhand, Arunachal, and Kerala, who always respond to our calls of support. I am sure, sir, we will tackle this menace by coming together. A special mention is due here for Faith and other national travel and hospitality associations. They are doing some good work in drawing policymakers' attention to the burning issues. It is slowly but surely making its mark. I thank you using your channels to spread word about today's event. A special thank to all the media which supported our efforts in spreading word about today's seminar. I must mention Travel Talk and Sanjeev for readily coming for help. Outlook Responsible Vertical and Condé Nast Traveler also put their might behind us. Thank friends. But a very special thanks to the social media team of ATOAI. Thanks Vidur, Shiva, Jasmine, Nisha, and especially Ronnie for tirelessly working to make this a success. And as always, it will not be over without mentioning the great effort of Sonam, Sonali, Rekha, Vivek, and Pawan from the Secretariat. But friends, today's day belongs to Vaibhav. His ceaseless effort and passion over last many years has given us this event. He headed our committee on risk management for many years, flagging these issues, resulting in today's webinar. I know this is just a beginning and his and our work has just begun. We have to work hard to give back to the future generation what we have borrowed from them. Thanks, friend, once again for joining us today. Thank you. So over to you, Vinayak.
Rajesh,
For the meeting.
thank you. We can let everybody go and enjoy their lunches. But thank you again from the bottom of my heart and from everybody, the team here. It was a great session. I have been in tours and operations since so many years, but Vavo have learned from your presentation today. I need to tell you that. And I am going to see through the presentation once again for the parts I missed. And let me tell each and everyone, there's a lot to learn from the presentation today. I'm sure everybody would agree. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, team ATOI. And thank you, friends, for joining in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All the best. Thank you, everyone. It's been a great session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
For joining.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brigadier Sahab.